Today we're talking about the Mavic Mini. Pretty cool. I'm a drone guy now. I love it. I love this little drone. So easy to control. Whoa. Where are you going, Nick? Get it. Not over there. I just finished painting. Stay away from the cats. I did not think this through. I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for joining me. If you're new to this channel, my name is Dave, and this is Red Arrow Media. On this channel, you'll find some filmmaking tips, some camera gear reviews, and anything involves video production. I like to talk about it. I've been in the video production field for a long time. I'm a television producer. I've been working at a local station for over 20 years. I really enjoy it, and in my spare time, I really enjoy making my own videos, whether it's with kids, clients, or anything else. I love making videos. Now, this might be a little bit different if you've been watching my channel in the past, because this is my very first drone video. Now, on Father's Day, my beautiful wife and fantastic children gave me the gift of drone. They gave me my first ever drone, the Mavic Mini. Now, this was a drone that I was very much interested, and they knew I wanted this, so they said, hey, why not just go ahead and get the drone for the best dad ever? Yeah, something like that. Anyways, I was very excited to get my first drone, but I didn't want to make a video about it right away. I wanted to take my time and learn how to use the drone properly. You see, this is my first ever drone. I've never even used another drone in my life. I work in the field where we use drones all the time, but for me, I was a producer and a videographer, but I was not using the drone. Some of my friends made me the offer of letting me use their drones, which was very nice, but I didn't want to take a chance and smash their drones because what if I did that? I would feel like a jerk, wouldn't I? So finally I got my own drone and I can take it out and get to know it. It took me a while to get really comfortable with this drone, and I'm still learning along the way. So maybe you're like me, you just bought the Mavic Mini, or you're at home and you're thinking, I'm really interested in a drone, maybe the Mavic Mini would be perfect for me. For me, the Mavic Mini was perfect. Small, cheap, light, under the 250 gram rule. So here in Canada, I don't necessarily need to go get my drone license and my drone permit. Sure, I gotta be responsible with it, but for now, I'm super happy to have this tiny little drone that I can take with me, fits in my bag, no problem, and whenever I wanna shoot, I just have to make sure I'm not breaking any laws and that I'm not gonna hurt anybody. Safety is the most important thing. I just fire it up and I get some great shots. For me, having the gimbal was just another tool to tell my stories. The creativity can just come out, no problem. It's a fantastic little device that you can just have fun with. If you just want to go fly and pretend you're flying in the sky, you can do that. But it's also a very good cinematic tool and it can give you some really cool shots. Sure, the camera's not as good as some of the other drones, but it's still very good. And it's not the camera, it's the person using the camera and using the gimbal. So let me give you some tips that I've learned so far using the Mavic Mini that might make your video production a little bit better. Now, my first tip is a very simple one. Make sure your drone is up to date, meaning that the firmware on your drone is up to date and the firmware on your batteries and your remote are up to date. That's the first thing you want to make sure, so that when you go out in the field, you don't have to worry about updating things out there because it's a little bit chaotic. Normally you're outside, who knows where you are. Maybe you don't even have good reception. Make sure you do that at home. They're always updating things. The firmware seems to be changing on a constant basis, so make sure you upgrade all of that before you go out for your shoots. Now, the next thing is about SD cards. This doesn't just go for the Mavic Mini, but any camera. It's always a good idea to format your SD card inside your device. So if I'm using a camera, right now I'm shooting on the Sony a6400. When I popped in my SD card, I made sure I formatted that card in the camera so that it's ready to go. That way it sets up its file systems. Now we know DJI has a different file system and a different codec, the way they record things. So when it comes to the Mavic Mini, it's always a good idea to pop the micro SD card into the little drone and format it right there through the remote into the camera, into the drone. Because this way it will automatically set that file format that you need to record everything. Now at my work, sometimes I help train the volunteers and the co-op students on different gears that we have, new cameras or editing systems. And when it comes to cameras, I make sure one of the first things I teach them is all about the proper use of using neutral density or ND filters. Now, I have an ND filter for the Mavic Mini. I have a Freewell, and I believe it's a ND32 with the polarizer. It's the only one I got because right now, if you take a look, a lot of the ND filters for the Mavic Mini are very expensive, and for what you're getting is such a tiny little ND filter. The price is way too much if you ask me, and I wanted to start off and test it out. So I got the ND32, which I use quite often when I'm shooting with my Sony or a Canon, and I use it more often because if I'm shooting outdoors in full sun or a bright day, the ND32 for me really is the best bang for your buck. However, I don't think you necessarily need ND filters for the Mavic Mini. I like using it because I like getting that cinematic footage where you can control your shutter and get your 180 rule. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why you would use the ND. I also like the polarizer because it gives me that nice effect that makes my sky nice and blue, and it takes away the glare a little bit when you're shooting water or cars or anything traffic wise. It takes a little bit of the glare away. So I really like that, and that's why I like using ND. But I've used it without ND, and the results are pretty good. If you're not looking for that cinematic look, make sure your shutter's at right speed, I think you don't really need ND. If you want to go out and buy the ND filters, I don't think you're going to be upset about that. I think you're going to get some really good results. But if you're not sure and you got the Mavic Mini because you wanted a simple drone, then maybe you don't need to get the ND filters. But if it's something in the future that you're looking at, I think you'll be happy with it. Now, I don't shoot a lot of photos with the Mavic Mini. Matter of fact, I don't shoot a lot of photos at all. I'm more of a video person, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with taking photos. I just don't do it often. I prefer to take videos. So when it comes to the Mavic Mini, you can take photos, you can take video, which is great. However, when it comes to video in the Mavic Mini, you do have a lot of options when it comes to frame rates, whether you're shooting in 2.7K, 1080p, you're going to slow it down. There's lots of different options, which is great because that's what we want. We want to have those options. Sure, I think we all agree we would love the Mavic Mini to have 4K. It doesn't, and that's okay. It's a budget drone, and that doesn't have 4K, that's fine. But 2.7K is pretty decent, and I really enjoy it. For me, it took me some time to figure out what I wanted to shoot on. Because I like shooting more cinematic looking shots, I like being able to slow that down. And I really like the idea of shooting at 60 frames per second, but with this camera, you can't do that. The little gimbal, the little drone will only allow you to do 1080p, which is HD, which is great, at 60 frames, but at 2.7K, you max out at 30, or for me, I like to shoot at 24 frames. So I was trying to find something as a happy balance. For me, I like to shoot at 2.7K, which is a little bit larger video, which I can manipulate later on in my editing system. I added in Premiere, but whatever you edit on, you can manipulate that just a little bit more. I like the idea of being able to do that, but I also like to be able to slow down my footage just a little bit. So for me, this is what I came up with. I shoot everything at 2.7K at 30 frames per second. So I'll take that 2.7K 30 frames per second video and I'll pop it in to a 24 frames per second timeline. This will slow it down just enough to take out any little bit of micro jitters or anything that I don't like, and it gives me a nice smooth shot, I think. Sure, I would love to be able to slow it down a little bit more, but once you start slowing it down, a 30 frame shot a little bit more, you're going to get a lot more jitters. So for me, so far, this is what I'm happy with. Hopefully there'll be an update sometime. Well, maybe even give us a 2.7K at 60 frames. I would love that. That would really slow things down for me, and I get the really, really nice cinematic shots. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if you're like me, once you first get the Mavic Mini, all you want to do is take it out and fly it. Don't. Make sure, like I said, you update the firmware and do all that stuff. But also familiarize yourself with the Mavic Mini itself, the drone, and especially the remote and all the settings in the app, because the Fly More app is actually pretty good. It's new. It's only for the Mavic Mini. It's not for the other drones, but it can be confusing, and you really want to get to know it before you go out and fly. It's so hard, right? You get this thing. What's the first thing you do? You fly it, and you just have it hovering. You're like, wow, this is pretty cool. But you got to make sure you learn a little bit about the app and how it works, because if you take it out on your first flight and you lose it, it's going to be embarrassing. Matter of fact, I have a first flight nightmare story, which I'll tell in a little bit later. But right now I wanted to talk about the flight modes on this. You have 3 different flight modes. You have the sport mode, which goes super fast with this thing, which is fantastic. You have the P mode, which is essentially the basic mode, which will allow you to operate as a regular drone. And it goes fairly fast, but not super fast like the sport mode. Now, the one I prefer the most is C mode, which is the cinematic mode. I really like this mode because it slows things down. So on different shots that I want to be a little bit more cinematic, it's going to slow the drone down, which slows down my movements and gives me a little bit more time to plan out my shot and make the movements that I want. Of course, if I'm flying too far and I need to get back real quick, pop it in sport mode and fly that sucker back so you don't lose it, batteries don't die. Plus, flying in sport mode every now and then is a lot of fun, isn't it? For me, one of the first accessories I went out and bought was a simple, very, very cheap landing pad. A lot of people like to land and take off from their hand. Now, I'm not necessarily one of those people, but I had to in certain situations, so I had to learn how to do it. It's not that hard, especially the takeoff. I mean, you just hold it, hit the takeoff button, and you're good to go. Sure, you can do things with the joystick that allow you to do that too, but very simple. To land it, it's a little bit more complicated, but I had to do it because I was in a situation where there was no spot where I could land it. It was near water, there was some cliffs. I knew that going in that it wasn't going to be easy, so I told myself I'm going to have to land this thing on my hand. Of course, I watched some YouTube videos on how to do it. Very, very simple. You just got to do it with confidence, and it works very, very simple. So if I have to launch with my hand, land it on my hand, no problem. But I think I prefer to do it on the landing pad. But I know that if I need to do it because I don't have any options, I can still do it from the hand, which is great. Now I want to talk about issues with the Mavic Mini. So far I haven't had a lot of issues with the little drone, but I've watched on forums and read on forums on how sometimes over water or in different situations the Mavic Mini can fail you and you can lose your drone. Knock on wood, that hasn't happened to me. Now I told you about my first time using this thing. I actually hit a bird, or more accurately, a bird hit the drone. I was just doing a simple test flight at my in-laws, and I wanted to just take it up and just get to know it. You know, fly it left to right, up and down. Nothing too complicated. There's a big field out there. I had lots of room. I was just taking it easy. Now I was flying it, and I did see a bird. Didn't really think anything of it, so I lowered it a bit and I was getting ready to change up my shot. Then all of a sudden the bird swooped underneath and banged the drone. I actually have the footage right here, and it knocked the drone on the ground. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It's the first time I'm flying a drone and I crashed it? Are you kidding me? So of course I ran over to the drone. I picked it up and it seemed okay. I took a quick look. Funny enough, the bird was over there and I checked out the bird. I don't want to hurt any animals. I don't want to hurt any birds. I know a lot of people that fly drones get upset at birds, but you know what? The bird was okay. It flew away. I saw it flying later on. It was a black bird and it was fine. It wasn't a very big bird, but it did get under it and knock it, which is very, very odd. But luckily, the drone itself fell and crashed into the grass. It only fell. It was maybe 6 feet in the air. So for my first crash, I think that was a good one, and maybe that's all I'll have, knock on wood. But it was a little bit scary to fly this for the first time and crash it or have a bird run into it. Now, I also was very tentative when I flew it over water. I did not want to lose it in water. Of course, nobody wants to lose it, but why over water? Especially, you know, if you're in a lake or in a river, you're going to lose it. That's it. I don't fly it too far out into the water. I don't live near the oceans. I live in Ottawa in Canada. We have plenty of rivers. We have plenty of lakes, which is fantastic. And I love flying it over water. I'm just careful. I don't fly it too low over the water. I'm always at least 5 to 10 meters above. I'm not sure if that's the lowest you should go, because I know some people really like to get low, and I would love to. When I'm shooting out in the field, I really love to start off on a nice low shot and just come up with the drone. It's one of my favorite things, and I would love to do that over water. I'm just not that confident yet to do that. Maybe you at home are confident to do that, and that's great, but I'm always a little bit cautious flying over water. However, I've gotten a lot better, and I'm not scared to fly over water now. It gives you some great shots, having that landscape over water and some great shots at lakes and rivers and locks, you name it. Shooting over water can be a lot of fun. So if you've flown the Mavic Mini for any time, you're going to notice some errors at some point. For me, like I said, my first flight, I had a little bit of a crash. I checked the drone. It was perfectly fine. But one thing that did happen recently, I was shooting at the in-laws, and they have a farm. And I was shooting them. They were combining and harvesting their rye, and I wanted to get some cool shots. So I brought it out. It was a little bit hot. I flew it. It was flying okay. Then all of a sudden, I had this horrible gimbal shake. The gimbal was just shaking like you wouldn't believe. Take a look at the footage. Like, this is something kind of freaking me out. I didn't get any error message or anything like that. Then I started to bring it back. It was still shaking. I said, I'm bringing this thing back. I got gimbal error messages. So brought it back, and I restarted it, and I flew it. And and it happened one more time with the ND filter off. So I know it can't be the ND filter. Returned it. I said, this is it. I'll try one more time. If it doesn't work, that's it. So restarted it, put the ND filter, and sure enough, I was able to shoot probably for another 30, 45, maybe even 50 minutes. I can't remember. And I got some great shots. I was very, very happy. And I kept an eye on it, and the gimbal never had that shake again. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. I found it really, really odd. I wasn't sure why. I did some research, and some people said it was because there was dirt on the lens, dirt on the gimbal. People said it was the ND filter. People said it was the firmware. I'm not sure. I've checked all this stuff. I'm not sure. The only thing I can think is that the drone itself and the batteries were in my car for a while. I took the kids to the waterfront to just check it out and get some exercise. So it was in the car, and it was very, very hot that day. So maybe the batteries were overheating. I didn't notice it on the remote, but I didn't press and take a look. You can take a look at the battery temperature and everything. I didn't really notice anything, and there was no beeping or anything like that. So the only thing I think of this camera shake was from that the batteries were too hot. Hopefully that's what it was, because it did make me a little bit nervous, and I really like having that smooth gimbal on the drone. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. If it happens to you, please let me know. So I think we can all agree that the Mavic Mini is a lot of fun to use. I love flying this tiny little drone. In fact, it's made me think about getting another drone in the future. Sure, I don't like the idea of getting official license for the drone here in Canada, but it's something that I'll look into, because if it's something that I like doing, I'll put that investment into it, no problem. But for now, I really like using this gimbal. You get some very, very creative shots, and I think the camera itself, while it doesn't give you the quality of the other more expensive gimbals, gives you a pretty darn good shot, and I really, really like the look, and I'm having a lot of fun. I've never used it before, so the fact that I can take this thing out, and now I'm very, very comfortable, more important, I'm very confident I can go out and get the shot that I want. So far, I love using this little drone. I'm sure if you have it at home, you love using this drone. It gives us some headaches sometimes, but when it's working, it's fantastic. I think we can all agree. So please let me know in the comments some of the favorite things about this drone. And if you have any advice for me, I'm just kind of learning, please give me advice. I'm always looking to learn new techniques and new skills for video production, and when it comes to drones, I'm a noob, so if you got some advice to me, I would love to hear it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like, hit the like button if you liked. If you didn't, that's okay. I'm Dave, and thanks for watching.